she covered her sister's shift as a black maid, but ended up meeting Japanese CEO who fell in love. The storm rolled in fast over Brooklyn, cloaking the city in thick grey rain. Thunder echoed in the distance, and the window panes of the small apartment rattled with each gust of wind. Inside, Amora sat cross-legged on the floor beside the old space heater, a thick medical textbook open in her lap. Her hair, styled in intricate box braids, was pulled back from her face, a few loose strands framing her forehead. A cup of instant noodles sat untouched beside her, now soggy and cold. She was still in her scrubs from class, a hoodie thrown over them for warmth. Her final exam was in the morning, clinical diagnostics, the last obstacle before graduation. She had been studying for hours, and yet nothing seemed to be sticking. She ran a highlighter across the same line 3 times, her eyes glazed. Then her phone rang. She jumped. The screen read, "Simone." She answered on the first ring. "Hey, Amora." Simone's voice was shaky, strained. "I fell. I can't stand." Amora straightened up. "What happened?" "I was working and I slipped. My ankle. It's bad. I don't think I can go to my next shift." "What shift?" "The new client in Westchester. Tonight's the trial." First night there was a long pause. "You want me to go?" "Please, just this once, Simone. I have an exam at 8 a.m. "I know. I'm sorry, but I can't lose this one. It's a mansion, Amora. Rich clients, regular hours. If I cancel tonight, it's over before it starts." Amora pressed her fingers against her eyes. "You said it was just a trial. You've never met them before. They don't know what I look like. You can go as me. The uniform is clean, it's in the pocket. You just have to show up, do the basics, and leave." Amora stood up and began pacing. "You know I'm not a cleaner." "You know enough," Simone replied. "You've helped me before. It's nothing fancy. Wipe down the surfaces, tidy up a bit, maybe a couple of bedrooms. That's it." Amora looked around the tiny apartment. Their backpacks hung on the back of the door. A single coat rack by the fridge held both of their jackets. One cracked window was stuffed with old towels to block the draft. Simone's ankle was likely swelling fast. She was alone and still thinking about work. She exhaled slowly. "Fine. I'll go." I said, "Fine. Text me the address." "Thank you," Simone whispered. "Really?" Amora ended the call without replying. She moved quickly, knowing she would lose her nerve if she thought too long. In the bathroom, she found the pressed grey uniform hanging from a hook. She stripped out of her hoodie and scrubs and changed. It was a little big on her, but not enough to matter. The ID clipped to the front read S. James. She secured her braids into a high ponytail and splashed cold water on her face. At the front door, she pulled on her boots and raincoat, grabbed her umbrella, bent and barely usable, and stepped out into the storm. The wind hit her like a slap, and the umbrella nearly flipped in her hand. She forced it upright and ran to the subway, water already seeping into her shoes. On the platform, she checked the address Simone had sent. Hawthorne Lane, Westchester, a neighborhood far removed from their world. As the train pulled in, she stepped inside, soaking wet, heart pounding. She clutched her bag to her chest and tried not to think about what tomorrow would look like. Just tonight, just one favor, then back to studying. Then back to her life. The cab rolled to a quiet stop at the edge of a long, curved driveway. Amora stepped out into the rain, the estate rising before her like something out of a forgotten dream. The house was massive, a blend of modern architecture and traditional Japanese design, with clean lines, dark wood, and large windows overlooking a minimalist stone garden. But there was something strange in its stillness. The lights glowed, yes, but dimly, as if the house were asleep. Not warm, not alive. She clutched the handle of her umbrella as she approached the heavy wooden door. Her heart thudded louder than the thunder. Before she could knock, the door creaked open. A tall man stood in the doorway, silhouetted by the soft light behind him. He looked like he had just come out of a long meeting or a sleepless night, or both. His shirt was slightly wrinkled, the top button undone, his sleeves rolled to the elbows. He had sharp, elegant features, with dark, intelligent eyes and a few distinguished strands of silver at his temples. His eyes were tired and deeply guarded. He said nothing at first, just scanned her quickly, uniform, badge, the umbrella dripping at her feet. "You're from the cleaning service?" Amora hesitated, startled by his directness. "Yes." "I'm Simone." He didn't question it, his eyes flicking to the badge. "You're late." "Sorry," she mumbled. He stepped aside. "Just the first floor. Living room and library." "No need to go upstairs." She nodded quickly and stepped past him. The door closed behind her with a quiet thud. Inside, the space was breathtaking and yet strangely cold. Polished concrete floors, minimalist furniture, and art she could never afford to study, let alone hang on her walls. But there were no flowers, no signs of life, no warmth. It felt more like a showroom than a home. Amora walked softly into the living room and set down her cleaning bag. She glanced once toward the hallway, then began wiping down surfaces with careful, practiced motions. Her nerves were still buzzing. She was halfway through dusting the coffee table when she heard it. A small shuffle behind her, like bare feet on wood. She turned. A boy stood at the edge of the room, maybe 4 years old, with soft dark hair and big brown eyes that seemed too serious for someone his age. He clutched a stuffed dragon in one hand, the other hanging limply at his side. Amora froze, then offered a soft smile. "Hi there." He didn't answer, just tilted his head slightly. "I'm just here to clean a little." "What's your name?" Still nothing. He blinked up at her, curious but quiet. She glanced at the tissues in her apron pocket, then reached in and pulled one out. With a few swift folds, she shaped it into a small paper plane. "You want to see something cool?" she whispered. The boy's eyes followed her hand as she gently tossed the plane toward him. It fluttered awkwardly and landed near his feet. He bent to pick it up and smiled, just slightly. A flicker of amusement. Amora's heart melted. Behind her, a voice spoke. "He never smiles for strangers." She turned sharply. The man from before stood in the doorway, arms crossed loosely over his chest. He wasn't scowling, but he wasn't smiling either. His gaze stayed fixed on his son, not Amora. "I didn't mean to bother him," she said quickly. "You didn't." His voice was low, even. "He's just cautious." That's all. The little boy looked up at his father, then back at Amora, still holding the paper plane. "I'll finish up and go," she said, her hands back to wiping. But Kato Ishikawa did not leave the room. He stayed there a moment longer, watching the woman with the kind eyes and the nervous smile, who somehow made his son laugh. And for the first time in a very long time, he did not feel completely alone. The house had grown quieter since Amora arrived, but not in the hollow way it had before. The living room, once stiff and silent, now held the faint rustle of light footsteps. Amora continued wiping the shelves, careful and steady, occasionally glancing at the small boy watching from the hallway. Ren had not spoken much, but he hadn't left. He clutched the paper plane in one hand and leaned against the wall like a tiny guard. "Dinner's ready," a deep voice called. Amora turned to see Kato at the dining room archway, sleeves rolled, a dish towel on his shoulder. She blinked. "I can move out of the way." He shook his head. "My chef is off tonight." "I cooked." "My son has already invited you." Ren gave a small, solemn nod. Amora hesitated, then wiped her hands. "I really shouldn't." "It's just curry," Kato said, already turning. The dining room was long and elegant, but the food was modest. 3 plates, simple chicken curry and rice, and a bowl of salad. Ren climbed into his booster seat. Kato gestured to the chair beside him. Amora sat cautiously. "Do you always have your cleaners join you?" Kato didn't look up. "Only the ones who fold paper airplanes." She laughed, the tension easing for a moment. Ren ate more than expected, even leaning into Amora and whispering, "You eat slow." Kato looked up, surprised. He doesn't usually talk to anyone. Amora smiled. I must have special curry energy. Kato's eyes lingered. Have you worked in cleaning long? Amora stiffened. Not exactly. I've just helped family. So, this isn't your main job? No, I'm finishing school. What are you studying? She hesitated. Health sciences. He nodded slowly, silent, but studying her as if she were a puzzle. After dinner, Amora cleared the plates. Kato watched, distracted, not stopping her. When she reached for her coat, Ren appeared at her side, small fingers clutching hers. Can you read me a story? He asked. Amora blinked. Me? He nodded, already tugging. She looked back at Kato. If it's okay, just one. His arms crossed, but he gave a short nod. Second room on the left. Ren's room was neat. Pale grey walls, books lined on a low shelf. A nightlight glowed softly. Amora helped him onto the bed and picked a story about a dragon who couldn't sleep. As she read, Ren's head tilted until it rested on her arm, his breathing evened out, his stuffed dragon tucked under the blanket, the tissue plain on the nightstand. She whispered the last line and closed the book. When she turned, Kato was at the doorway, silent, watching. She rose slowly, brushing Ren's hair back before stepping into the hall. Thank you, Kato said quietly. For what? He looked toward the bed. For that. He hasn't let anyone in there since. He stopped, his voice fading. Amora didn't ask. She didn't need to. I should go, she whispered. He followed her downstairs. At the door, she reached for the knob, but he stepped ahead, lifting an umbrella. Without a word, he held it above her as they stepped into the rain. Hard to find someone who cleans and reads bedtime stories, he murmured. She glanced up, startled by the softness in his voice. Thank you for today, he added. She could only nod. As she walked toward the gate, he stood watching until she vanished into the night. The next morning, Kato Ishikawa sat at the edge of his desk, phone to his ear. I want the same woman back, he said firmly. Simone, the one from last night. Send her again. There was a pause on the other end. Mr. Ishikawa, I'll need to confirm her schedule. Then confirm it, he said curtly, then ended the call. Something had shifted in his house last night. For the first time in a long time, it had felt less like a museum and more like a home. Back in Brooklyn, Simone was still resting when Amora came home from class. They called, Simone murmured. The client wants me again. I told them yes. Then I gave them your number instead. Amora blinked. Simone, you didn't. I can't go, Amora. You saw my ankle. But he asked for me, which means he asked for you. I have exams. I can't just play housekeeper for some man in Westchester. Before Simone could argue, Amora's phone rang. Unknown number. She stared at the screen, then answered. Simone. The voice was unmistakable. Calm, deep, unmistakably Kato Ishikawa. Amora's pulse spiked. This is Ishikawa. I'd like you to return today. I'll arrange for transportation. You'll be compensated. I don't think I. You can, he interrupted, his tone firm but not unkind. Please. I insist. Amora hesitated. She thought of Ren's small hand gripping hers, his shy laugh. The paper airplane sailing across the room. I'll come, she said softly. That afternoon, a black car waited for her at campus. At the estate, Kato greeted her at the door. Think of it less as cleaning, more as tutoring my son, he said. He responds to you. Amora crossed her arms. Only after classes and no extra pay. I'm not doing this for the money. Kato nodded, almost smiling. As you wish. The days took on a quiet rhythm. Amora arrived each afternoon, changed into her uniform, and moved through the house with quiet familiarity. On the nights when the kitchen staff was off, she cooked simple meals. She folded Ren's tiny socks, cleaned his playroom, and helped him arrange his picture books. Ren began to trail after her everywhere. Kato saw it all. Sometimes from the study window, sometimes from the doorway, silent and still, he watched as Amora dusted Ren's room and uncovered an old photo frame wedged between storybooks. She wiped it clean and placed it on his desk, a photo of a woman with warm eyes cradling a baby. Ren's mother. Another evening, Amora found a well-loved stuffed dragon in a box labeled "Donate." She did not say a word, just brushed it off, fluffed it up, and set it gently on Ren's pillow. Amora never mentioned either gesture, but Kato noticed, and as the days passed, something began to loosen in him. A weight he had not known how to name. Nights in the Ishikawa house had always been the hardest. Ren, small and watchful, had feared the dark since the day his mother stopped coming through the door. Most nights he woke crying. Amora noticed. One evening, instead of a quick bedtime story, she brought out paper and markers. Sitting on the floor beside his bed, she began cutting out stars, moons, and constellations, taping them across the pale grey walls. "What's that one?" Ren asked, pointing. "That's Orion," she whispered. "He's strong. He watches over sleepers." "And that one?" Amora smiled. "Lyra. They say her light carries music from heaven." Ren blinked. "From Mom." Amora paused, then nodded. "Yes, like a lullaby she's sending down so you never have to be afraid again." Later that night, Kato returned home and heard voices from Ren's room. He pushed the door open slightly. Amora sat beside his son, her arm gently around him, pointing at the constellations on the wall. Ren was whispering the names after her, smiling. Kato stood in the hallway, unmoving. Something in his chest ached, something unfamiliar. Then came another rainy night. Amora arrived soaked, but at dinner, her face was pale, her hands trembling. "You're sick," Kato said. "I'm fine," she murmured, swaying slightly. He caught her elbow. "Enough. Go lie down." He guided Amora to the guest room. Her skin burned with fever. He went to the kitchen and made broth, returning with a steaming bowl and a cool cloth. As he sat beside her and pressed the cloth to her forehead, she stirred. "Dad," she whispered, eyes still closed. "I saw him. In my dream. I was 12 when he died. I miss him." Kato swallowed. She looked so young, so vulnerable. He sat there still for a moment, then said softly, "If I were family to you, I'd be proud." Later that night, Ren crept into the room, his dragon in hand. "Can we keep her?" he whispered. Kato could not answer. But as he looked at the girl sleeping in his home, her quiet presence making the air feel warm again, he knew something had changed. The Ishikawa estate was unusually quiet that morning. Amora hummed softly as she dusted the shelves in the library. Ren sat on the rug at her feet, coloring. The sudden sound of the doorbell startled them both. Amora walked toward the front door. Standing there was a man in a grey suit holding a clipboard. "Good morning. I'm from Everclean Services. I'm here for a routine check-in. Simone James is assigned to this residence, correct?" Amora froze. Her throat went dry. Yes." The man's eyes narrowed. He glanced down at his papers, then back at her. "And you are?" Her words stuck. Ren tugged at her sleeve, confused. "That's Amora," he said innocently. The man straightened, suspicion flickering across his face. "Amora? There's no Amora in our records." Her pulse hammered. She opened her mouth, desperate to form an explanation, when a voice cut through the silence. "What's going on?" Kato's tall figure filled the hallway. The man turned to him. "Mr. Ishikawa, forgive me. I'm the regional manager with Everclean. This woman here, she isn't Simone James. She's not one of ours." Kato's gaze snapped to Amora, his eyes hardened. What is he talking about? Amora's mouth went dry. Mr. Ishikawa, the manager continued, your assigned cleaner has been on medical leave. Whoever this is, she's been here under false pretenses. Kato said nothing for a long moment. The silence was suffocating. Finally, his voice was cold, clipped. Leave us. The manager nodded stiffly and walked out. Kato, please. His voice cut through her plea. Who are you? She swallowed hard. My name is Amora. Simone is my sister. She's the one who was supposed to come, but she got hurt. I only came that first night to help her. I never meant. Kato's jaw clenched. So you lied. You came into my home under a false name. You let my son believe. His voice cracked, then hardened again. Do you have any idea what you've done? Tears blurred Amora's vision. I didn't want to deceive you. I thought it would just be one night. But then you asked me to come back and Simone wasn't ready, and Ren, her voice broke. I never planned to stay this long. I never wanted to hurt either of you. Do you know what it feels like to finally see my son smile again and realize it was built on a lie? She flinched. It wasn't a lie. Not with him. Every moment with Ren was real. I care about him. He stepped back, his voice low, dangerous. You're like everyone else. You walked into my life because you needed something. Money, security, whatever it was. You made me believe you were different. Her tears spilled. That's not true. But he wasn't listening anymore. You should go, he said flatly. She turned slowly. Ren had been standing there the whole time, confusion clouding his little face. Are you leaving? He whispered. Amora bent to kiss his forehead, her tears falling into his hair. I'm sorry, sweetheart. Then she walked out into the rain, her heart breaking with each step. The Ishikawa estate was quiet again. Not the gentle, warm quiet that had settled in during Amora's visits, but the heavy, suffocating silence that had ruled the house for 2 long years. Daddy, Ren's small voice came from the doorway one morning. He clutched his stuffed dragon, his bottom lip trembling. Is Miss Amora coming back? Kato's throat tightened. No, buddy. Not anymore. Ren's eyes filled. But she promised to read me the star story again. She said the stars are Mommy's lights. That night, unable to sleep, Kato sat in his study. He found himself remembering. Amora's hands gentle as she adjusted Ren's blanket. The way she had noticed the photo of his late wife tucked away. The stuffed dragon abandoned. He thought of her quiet, selfless acts of kindness, and he had thrown them back at her with one cruel sentence. You're just like everyone else. The words echoed now, bitter and hollow. The following week, Kato left the office early. His car turned down a street lined with brick buildings, the modest campus of the medical school she had mentioned. Through the wide glass window of the student clinic, he saw her. Amora sat at a small table with a young patient, a little boy no older than Ren, his head wrapped in a bandage. Amora leaned in close, her voice soft, her smile warm, guiding him as he tried to write something on a piece of paper. The boy beamed up at her as if she had just given him the world. Kato stood frozen outside. She hadn't been lying to manipulate him. She was simply being who she was. And he had been too blinded by his own fears to see it. That night, he walked into Ren's room. On the wall, the hand-drawn constellations Amora had taped up remained, a little crooked, but still glowing faintly. He sat on the edge of the bed. I'm sorry, buddy, he whispered. I'm sorry I ruined it. Later, long past midnight, Kato picked up his phone and called Simone's number. When she answered, he said the words that had been clawing at him all week. I think I owe your sister an apology. There was silence, followed by a sigh. Yes, Simone said softly. Yes, I think you do. The morning of Ren's birthday dawned bright and clear. Inside the Ishikawa estate, balloons and streamers gave the normally solemn house a rare warmth. Simone stood by the window, her ankle still healing. Beside her, Amora shifted uneasily, clutching a small wrapped gift. "I don't know if I should be here," she whispered. "You promised him," Simone said. The moment Amora walked inside, she heard it. "Miss Amora." Ren came racing down the hallway, his paper crown slipping sideways. He flung his arms around her waist with such force she nearly stumbled. "You came," he shouted, his little face glowing. Behind them, Kato appeared. He was not in his usual suit, but a simple navy sweater. "You didn't have to invite me," she said, her voice unsteady. His gaze met hers. "I didn't invite you for Ren. I invited you for me." When everyone had gathered in the dining room, Kato cleared his throat. "Before we celebrate," he said, his voice carrying across the small room, "there's something I need to say." He looked at Amora. "I thought I was done with love. That I had lost everything that made this house a home. But then one night, a girl walked through my door. She didn't ask for anything. She simply helped my son laugh again. She helped me remember what it feels like to come home to light instead of silence." Amora's eyes blurred. Kato reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. He opened it, revealing not a grand diamond, but a simple gold band. "This isn't a proposal," he said softly. "It's a promise. I don't want anything more than to stand by you, if you'll let me. I want you here, not as a helper, not as a guest, but as family." He turned then, crouching to Ren's level. "Son, if you agree, I'd like Amora to be part of our family. What do you say?" Ren's grin stretched from ear to ear. He bounced on his toes, shouting, "Yes, yes, Daddy, marry her. Please marry Miss Amora." Laughter and tears filled the room. Amora pressed a hand to her mouth, then she crossed the space between them and wrapped her arms around Kato, holding him as if she never wanted to let go. "Yes," she whispered into his shoulder. "Yes, I want this, too." Ren squealed with joy, hugging both of them at once, wedging his small body between their embrace. Simone dabbed at her eyes, smiling through her tears. In a house that had once been nothing but shadows and grief, laughter and love bloomed again. It was not the home any of them had expected. But it was finally, undeniably, a family. What began as a single favor on a stormy night became the miracle that healed 3 broken hearts. Amora found not just love, but a home. Kato discovered that second chances are real. And Ren, he finally had the warmth and the light of a mother's love again.